Trump's legal world collapses. Judge pulls the trigger fast. What just happened is not normal. This is not routine court drama. This is not political noise. A judge moved with extraordinary speed. Lawyers were sanctioned. Assets were ordered frozen within 24 hours, and the court made one thing brutally clear. This case is no longer about whether fraud happened. The court ruled that fraud already occurred. That single decision changed everything. Why this moment is so serious: courts do not act this fast unless something is already proven. Judges are cautious by nature. They slow things down. They give chances. They allow arguments. But when a court moves quickly, it's usually because delay itself has become dangerous. In this case, the judge looked at the records and decided the risk was too high to wait. This did not start overnight. This didn't begin with a headline. It didn't begin with politics. It didn't begin with media pressure. It began with documents, with numbers, with financial records that did not match reality. Over time, those records told a story that couldn't be ignored. The line that changed everything. Here's the key moment most headlines skip. The judge issued what's called summary judgment. That means no jury needed, no debate about maybe, no waiting for a long trial. The evidence was so clear that the court ruled fraud was established as fact. That is extremely rare. Courts almost always let cases crawl forward. Here, the judge said the facts were undisputed. Once that happened, the court's job changed. Why asset freezes suddenly become possible. Once fraud is legally established, courts stop asking what happened and start asking what could happen next. Questions like, could money be moved? Could property be transferred? Could assets disappear before penalties are enforced? If the answer isn't a confident no, judges act. That's how asset freezes happen. Not as punishment, but as protection. The pattern that alarmed the court. This wasn't about one mistake. It wasn't one bad appraisal. It wasn't sloppy paperwork. The court found a repeated pattern across years. The pattern was simple. Assets were inflated when dealing with banks. The same assets were undervalued when dealing with tax authorities. You cannot live in two financial realities at once. Judges look for consistency. What they found instead was contradiction, and contradiction is where legal trouble begins. Why this matters beyond paperwork. These numbers don't exist in a vacuum. Banks rely on them. Insurers rely on them. Markets rely on them. When those numbers are manipulated, entire systems are misled. That's why the court didn't view this as harmless or technical. It saw a system, not an accident. And courts move aggressively when they believe a system is being abused. Sworn testimony changed the game. Another reason this escalated fast. Testimony under oath. This wasn't gossip. This wasn't leaks. People testified under penalty of perjury. They described how valuations were set, who knew about them, how decisions were made internally. That testimony matched the documents. When sworn words and paperwork align, judges take notice. At that point, defenses weaken fast. When numbers start contradicting each other. One of the fastest ways to lose credibility in court is inconsistent disclosures. Here, financial information submitted in different contexts didn't line up. And worse, new inconsistencies appeared during active litigation. That's critical. When a court is already watching and the story keeps changing, trust collapses. Once trust is gone, courts stop waiting. Why freezing assets makes sense to a judge. Freezing assets isn't emotional, it's strategic. Judges freeze assets when they believe money could move, property could shift, enforcement could become impossible. Later, complex business structures make movement easy. From a court's perspective, that's dangerous. So the judge hits pause. Nothing moves until the truth is locked in. The bond that never came. There's another detail that accelerated everything. No bond was posted. A bond tells the court, if I lose, the money is there. Without it, the court must assume risk. No bond means no safety net. And when that net disappears, courts build their own. That's how freezes become inevitable. When lawyers cross the line. Another turning point was the court's reaction to the defense strategy. Arguments already rejected were repeated. Decisions already made were ignored. Judges expect advocacy, but not defiance. When a judge sanctions lawyers personally, it's a warning. It means the court believes arguments are being made in bad faith. Once that happens, patience ends. Why the freeze was so broad? This wasn't a single property case. The business structure involved multiple entities tied together under centralized control. Freezing one account wouldn't protect anything. So the court went broad. Not because it wanted to, but because the structure left no other option. Containment became the only solution. Why this being a civil case? Matters many people think civil cases are lighter. That's wrong. Civil courts have enormous power over money, businesses, and control. Once liability is established, courts can impose massive penalties, strip business licenses, ban executives from operating companies, appoint monitors. Civil enforcement is often faster and more devastating financially than criminal cases. That's why this escalated so quickly. Why this is historically rare. Freezing the assets of a former president is almost unheard of. Courts know every move sets precedent. In this case, the judge decided the rule of law mattered more than past status. That decision alone makes this moment historic. What happens next? Expect appeals, delays, legal battles, more court supervision. But one thing is already locked in. The case has crossed a line it cannot uncross. This is no longer about allegations. It's about enforcement. Final thought: courts don't move this fast by accident. They move fast when waiting becomes risky. This moment will be studied for years, not because of who it involves, but because of what it proves. Power does not erase accountability. And once the court hits pause, everything changes. Like and subscribe to the channel.